I think what we'll do is we'd like to kind of go through our slides uninterrupted if possible. And if you have questions as they arise, if you could throw them into the chat, and then we'll have some time at the end for questions. So just some introductions at the top here. My name is George Sabo. I'm Director of Global Initiatives with the Division of Global Engagement. So I work on a variety of projects related to partnership development with institutions abroad. I work on our international agreements, as well as strategic communications for the division, and also as well as our divisional systems. And then I'm joined by a couple of other colleagues. Do you want to introduce yourselves?
Good morning. My name is Alice Michelle, Director of Study Abroad.
And I'm Adam Freed. I'm a Study Abroad Coordinator and Advisor.
I'm not part of this presentation at all, but it's nice to meet you, Jess. My name is Emma Laser, and I'm the Assistant Director of Study Abroad, so just here to learn as well.
I'm Chrissy, Study Abroad Advisor, not part of this presentation, but part of the Study Abroad team. Nice to meet you.
And I'm Jess Law from Linguistics. I'm an assistant professor here. Nice to see you.
Great. All right. So here are the things we'd like to get through. We did our introductions. I'm going to give you a little background on global classrooms and what we mean by that at UCSC. Then we'll give a brief overview of what Coil is, and then go through the actual call for applications, and then touch on a few of the frequently asked questions that we've gotten thus far from faculty since the call has gone out, and then opportunity for any other questions that may come to you during the presentation. Without further ado, so global classrooms at UCSC, what are they? They're courses that are enhanced using the course design approaches of collaborative online international learning, or COIL as it's referred to. This was a course design approach pioneered by John Rubin, director of the SUNY Coil Center, perhaps 10 plus years ago. He's now actually an independent Coil consultant, works with a lot of different universities to launch and integrate Coil at their institutions. This is something that we want to launch here at UCSC now. And so for this year, at least, we envision that these global classrooms would be existing courses at UCSC that are in some way revised, modified to embed a COIL component in them. And we envision that perhaps in future calls, these global classrooms would also be perhaps new courses that UCSC faculty are working on developing. But for this year, given the timeline that we're working with, course revisions are perhaps more realistic. So why COIL at UCSC? Well, it's a relatively inexpensive way to create broadly accessible opportunities for global learning for all UCSC students, and particularly the 95% of students that don't really have an opportunity to partake in a traditional mobility program. So these are global learning experiences that are embedded in existing courses. So in that way, they're quite a bit more accessible to all students. They're an opportunity for students and faculty to gain intercultural awareness and understanding. They provide opportunities for faculty to be involved in the development of new international partnerships through these COIL engagements. They prepare and orient our students toward future potential for study abroad opportunities. So students who may participate in a COIL course, a global classroom at UCSC, might then be more prepared, more interested in seeking out a traditional study abroad opportunity in the future. Of course, their professional development for faculty. They also enhance digital literacy skills. So students are working in virtual teams using online collaborative tools. And they also help enhance communication skills for students. So they're working quite a bit with students who may not speak English as their first language. And so it's an opportunity to develop those kinds of communication skills as well. So why Coil now? There's a lot going on in the world right now, but Coil is something that we have been thinking about trying to implement as part of our portfolio at Global Engagement for quite some time. And now seems like the right time to really focus our energies on this, given the pause in traditional mobility. And we've been given some funding to try to get this off the ground this year. You know, we have some bandwidth to really focus on this right now. Coil is also something that really, it anticipates some of the goals that we will likely see in our internationalization strategic plan that's forthcoming from the ACE Lab, our campus's participation in the ACE Internationalization Lab over the past 2 years. So one of those goals that we foresee will be that we really want to expand and strengthen globally focused research and engagement. So what does that mean? That means more of our faculty engaging with more of our partners to do interesting things like research, but also to do things like Coil. Additionally, one of the goals in this forthcoming strategic plan will be to provide global learning opportunities for all students. We see Coil as playing a big part in that, given the accessibility of it. If we can get more of these Coil experiences embedded into existing courses at UCSC, we think that this will be a great way to expand global learning opportunities. Maybe we should talk a little bit more about what Coil actually is. And so Adam has put together a nice little preview of what that is and a few examples.
Thanks, George. So I want to give a brief introduction to Coil, a little bit of the history, and then talk a little bit about what is Coil versus what isn't Coil. It's sort of a new thing, and there are some misconceptions about what Coil means. So we'll talk about that here. So as George said, Coil was first developed at the SUNY system, and it was a partnership through the system-wide International Programs Office and then the Online Education Office. And their goal, this was in the early 2000s, was to develop cross-national online programs. So this was fairly new in the field of international education at the time, and they really kickstarted it. And they actually coined the term Coil. They founded the Coil Center in 2006, and that covers the entire SUNY system. And since then, Coil, which is also sometimes called virtual exchange, primarily in Europe is called virtual exchange, has really grown rapidly. So a lot of university systems and individual institutions are adopting Coil and virtual exchange opportunities for their students as part of their internationalization strategies and just overall to broaden what they're able to do with online programs as well. So I'm not going to read here what is Coil. This is something from the SUNY Coil Center, and I encourage you to read it. But the easiest definition really is in the name. It's very aptly named. So the first thing is that it is collaborative. So this is differentiated from a standard online course in that the whole point of a Coil module or a Coil course, if it's longer, is to be collaborative between students. So it's not just individual assignments or discussion groups like you might find in a traditional online course. The assignments are designed specifically to encourage collaboration between different groups of students. It is online. The Coil module of a course is online, but the course itself doesn't have to be. In fact, in a video that we're going to have on the Global Classroom's website, there's a video from John Rubin, and what he says is that most Coil courses actually are not online courses, but that Coil piece is. And so when they were originally developing Coil, what they envisioned was 2 separate classrooms in different countries, teaching in whatever local language it is, and then coming together using virtual tools in a common language for collaborative assignments and just general intercultural learning. It's international. So if this was a UCSC course and a UCLA course, it wouldn't be defined as Coil. You can still assign all of these principles to it, but that international or sometimes intercultural piece is critical to Coil. It needs to be that. And the whole point when they first designed it was this cross-national idea. And it's learning, of course it's learning. So this changes the drive of student participation in the program. Whereas with a traditional mobility program, a student might choose a certain destination because of the courses that are available, but more often it's about the destination where they're going. This is course driven and it's faculty driven. So a student will decide to take a course, a COIL course or not, based on what that course is, rather than the COIL part of it itself. So it's really driven by the academics, and control of the academics is with the faculty from both institutions. That's additionally separated from traditional mobility, where maybe it's another university or program provider who's offering the academics. Here, UCSC faculty will have full control over the COIL module, so that it's easier to integrate the academic piece directly rather than doing things like transferring credits back in. This will be a UCSC course through and through. So what isn't COIL? COIL is not a traditional online course, as I mentioned earlier. That collaborative piece really sets it apart, and the international piece really sets it apart. It's also fairly formalized in the way that that collaboration takes place. So it isn't two classrooms in different places of the world where students are connecting over WhatsApp, or they're just talking over Skype occasionally. The collaboration is highly structured, the assignments are highly structured, and a lot can come out of that, but it is a formalized process. And so that's important. For example, if you had a course that you wanted to design with an international partner, and you said, okay, we have these assignments, let's just pair two students together and have them talk over Skype once a week for 5 weeks. That's not really COIL. It's too informal, and it doesn't adapt to the pedagogy of COIL specifically, which is the whole point. So we can go to the next one for a few examples. So here are two really great examples, and there are literally hundreds of examples online that you can see for all different disciplines. And in fact, the Coil Center did a 3-year study where they took 24 courses in all different disciplines and adapted them to Coil. And you can read case studies for each one of those. So if you're interested in a particular discipline, we'll share that link out. That's a fantastic resource if you're curious about how things worked or if they didn't work, just to get that data. But here are two examples. So the first one is a collaboration between a Russian university and a US university for women and gender studies and linguistics. The linguistics part of it is that the Russian course was split between women and gender studies, and it was also an English class. And so there were students that were doing that together, and then they combined that for the COIL participation group. It was a 15-week course. Something that we should mention is that COIL can be anywhere from 5 weeks to 15 weeks typically. So 5 basically to a full quarter or full semester. And the students met 7 times collaboratively. Now there is asynchronous stuff that happens as well, online discussion groups and things like that, readings, but the actual synchronous meetings were 7 times over the 15 weeks. And they utilized simple free Google tools. They created some web pages through Google Sites. They used recorded YouTube videos, and then they also used WhatsApp and Skype to communicate with each other for the synchronous sessions, as well as some other live video conferencing. So the collaboration was highly facilitated, and because the Russian students were learning English, they provided a lot more time for team building and that kind of creating the culture of that course, which was really exciting. And then what they did for the final assignment was that they had students partner up into small groups and identify a course topic from the women and gender studies portion of the course, and to create a PSA, a public service announcement around that issue. So this was great for both groups of students. It offered them that collaborative experience. And then they had this deliverable, this physical piece, this tangible piece that they could then share as proof of their collaboration successfully. So the second example is a little bit unique in that it is a combination of 3 universities. Typically, COIL is 2 partner universities, right? But this one was 3, and because it centered around great rivers. So great rivers in the United States, Egypt, and Peru. And it was a co-developed course, fully co-developed, and it was a 10-week course. And you can see there on the right side of the screen some of the data about the number of participants, how long it was, as well as contact hours and what they used. So you can see that it's widely varied as far as the tools that they were able to use. It can just be, Skype and Google tools and things. It's low cost, as George said at the beginning. This doesn't have to be a big monetary investment, which decreases the barrier to entry. Is something that we're really excited about. And the final assignment for that Great Rivers course was to co-create a video highlighting sustainability issues in the major rivers. So this saw students going out with their phones to film their community. These are universities that are near the Great Rivers. And so then combining that footage and working together to create scripts and things, highlighting a sustainability issue. And again, walking away with that tangible evidence of their participation in a COIL program, which is fantastic. So those are two examples of COIL courses. Again, if you go online and you Google examples of COIL courses, you'll find hundreds of other examples in all sorts of different disciplines.
Yeah, so I think looking at examples is definitely helpful, particularly if you're an instructor thinking about doing one of these. It's helpful to look at a lot of different examples. I think we can share some links, right, Adam, after the presentation?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, we've got plenty of links to various examples. Now I just want to walk through some of the highlights of the call for applications. I presume everyone here has probably read through the call, hopefully. But I just wanted to highlight a few things. So this year, because of the timeline we're working under, to put the call out this fall and try to get some applications in hopes of having faculty develop these to be delivered as early as fall 2021, we need to work pretty quickly. And because of that, we don't have enough time built in to our timeline to do what is typically done with the launch of Coil, where there's a great deal of effort put into partnership building and matchmaking at the beginning of all of this to help connect teaching partners at different institutions. Though this is something we really hope to be able to do in a future call, for this time around, we think that we'll probably be focusing mostly on applicants who have existing partnerships, who have some connection to work with, some idea of how they want to embed a COIL into their course. These, I think, will be the strongest applications for this time around. Jess, I believe you did mention you did have some collaborators in mind, potentially.
Yes.
Right, which is good. In terms of eligibility, it's open to Senate faculty and lecturers with departmental endorsement. And so departmental endorsement, we actually have, this is a form that's part of the application. So we really want to encourage you to be speaking with your department chair early and often to let them know what it is that you're proposing, to familiarize them with this call for applications, talk with them about how you would plan to offer this course as a COIL course, this global classroom, with some regularity over the next 3 to 5 years, I think is what we've said in the call. So that departmental endorsement is quite important because we'd like to see this global classroom offered multiple times. The call for applications, it provides for training and funding for UCSC faculty to learn how to develop this global classroom. The way that we're going to do that is we've connected with DePaul University, which is based in Chicago, and they've had quite a bit of experience with developing these global classrooms, what they refer to as global learning experiences. And so we're going to be going through a workshop with practitioners there to learn about how to develop these courses. So the UCSC instructor, as well as their teaching partner abroad, would be going through this workshop together. And so funding that we have would cover for the costs for both of those instructors to do this together. And then the UCSC instructor, we're able to offer summer compensation for the work that is involved in developing the COIL. course. A word about that summer compensation. So the way that we've had to structure this, because of the way that payments work on the UCSC campus, the workshop period is considered a professional development period for the UCSC faculty. There will be some information that the UCSC faculty will have to provide to the Committee on Courses of Instruction to sort of outline the revisions that the Coil component will create in the course. But we anticipate that there will be continued development work beyond the submission to the Committee on Courses of Instruction through the summer, such that the summer compensation will be paid during the summer. So this is how we've had to structure this for this year in order to be able to pay this stipend in this way. And just as a reminder, so the deadline for this, we're coming up to the deadline in a couple of weeks, October 30th by 5 p.m. The application should be submitted to our global address, global@ucsc.edu, with a copy to your unit head, so your chair, provost. The application consists of the 3 items outlined in the call: the statement of interest, that department college endorsement form that I mentioned, as well as the teaching partner institution confirmation form. So that form is really, it's looking for some indication from the partner that you anticipate working with that they are also on board for working on this project, and it will be feasible for them to engage with you in this project. And so here's just a review of the timeline that we're working with. So as I mentioned, the deadline is October 30th for the applications, and we anticipate notifying awardees by early November. So we will have our cohort formed by early November. And then we will have a sort of kickoff call, an intro session with DePaul University at some point in mid-November. We're still working on figuring out what that date will be, but probably just prior to Thanksgiving, we'll have a call with DePaul University with our cohort. And then in January, we'll probably have another call just with our cohort internally, and we'll be thinking about what the format of that meeting will look like. And then the actual workshop with DePaul will take place in February, late February, early March. And so that's a workshop that's mostly asynchronous. There will be readings, there will be online discussion. There will also be 2 synchronous meetings taking place on the Fridays. This is all in the call for applications, but just wanted to review it here. And those will be early morning. Actually, they're later in the day, it's Chicago time, but they're early morning California time. And then the hope is that by the time faculty have moved through these several meetings and workshops, and they've been having ongoing discussions with their partners about how they're going to design this Coil component, they will be able to submit what they need to submit to CCI by early spring 2021, if possible. There is a timeline with CCI. It's published on their website, the course approval calendar. The link is there. I guess my suggestion here would be to work with your department chair to figure out how and when you're going to submit what you need to submit to CCI. And I believe your chair will be able to help guide you in that process, perhaps much better than we can, though we are here to help and support as well. And we have had a preliminary meeting with CCI to try to better understand what it is that they will expect from faculty for these revisions. They are supportive of this idea of global classrooms. They're interested in it, but they will require a review, as any other course revision would require. Encourage you to have a look at the course approval calendar, as well as another resource that I think we link later on here. So just to go through what's in a strong application. So this is from our perspective. We're still working on forming our selection committee. The selection committee will be composed of faculty as well as a few staff from global engagement. But from our perspective, a strong application in the statement of interest, you're providing really sound rationale for why you've chosen a particular partner and the course, and why you think that it's particularly suitable to a Coil adaptation. You're providing some rationale for why you believe this course would benefit from a Coil adaptation. It has signs of logistical feasibility. So you plan to offer your course in 2021-22 academic year, and so does your partner. And there is a suitable enrollment number. So typically a smaller course, 15 to 30 students, is considered optimal for a Coil course. So you would want to address that in your application as well. And then if you have any particular qualifications, if you've done something Coil-like in the past, or if perhaps your partner has done something like Coil in the past, you would certainly want to talk about those qualifications in your application. Then the department college endorsement form, so that's very important. We would want to see there's some evidence that the department is supportive of this development of the global classroom, and some outline of a plan for how the global classroom will be offered into the future. So that's all described in the form, and your chair will have an opportunity to explain that there. And then with the teaching partner institution confirmation form, we'd like to see some evidence of a commitment from the partner, that they understand what they're getting into in terms of the project, working on the project with you, and they're committed to being part of the workshop with you, and they have the availability to do that. Now we move into the frequently asked questions. So since our call has gone out, we've had quite a few inquiries from faculty, lots of different questions coming through, and we've put together a short list here of the big ones. The first question: I'm interested in adapting my course with Coil methods, but I don't have an international partner in mind. How can I go about finding a partner? That's a very good question. As I mentioned earlier, we think that this time around, given our application timeline, we don't have a lot of time to really cultivate new partnerships right at this moment. I think the best thing to do at this point would be learn a little bit more about what Coil is and start to think about how you would want to present yourself to international partners, present yourself as an instructor, and present your interest in Coil, and perhaps how you might want to implement Coil in one of your courses, or perhaps it's a new course, but to maybe think through a description of what that is, something that could be shared around with a network of international partners, so that we can start to identify connections and start to cultivate those relationships, so that next time a call comes around, there would be that foundation in place to put forward a really compelling application. And so Adam and I are thinking about ways to really sort of systematize and facilitate that for the next time around. So the next question: will I need to submit my course for CCI approval? Yes, the answer is yes. And is it a revision or a new course? This is a difficult question. I think that is probably best posed to CCI. There are requirements for the process, and there's a link there to the CCI course toolbox, which is actually just one of the CCI web pages that provides a lot of good information about what the expectations are for a submission to CCI. So I encourage you to check that out, and also, as I mentioned before, work with your chair to figure out the best way to put forward this submission to CCI.
Yeah, and then we have a few more general questions. So the first one is there an ideal type of course for this? As so George already mentioned, Coil is best done with smaller courses. So the SUNY Coil Center recommends anywhere from 15 to 30, and then the same number on the other side. But that's not prohibitive, and we're researching other ways. If you have a larger course that you're thinking about, that we may still be able to adapt Coil in a larger setting, but typically smaller is better. As far as, a physical on-campus course or online, obviously right now things are remote. So it's going to be an online course. That's totally fine since all of the collaboration happens online anyway. The short answer to this one is no, there's not an ideal type. It can be adapted to almost anything, which is great. Some things happen a little bit more difficult in a difficult way, but we can figure that out. Everything is possible. Joint applications. So if you have a UCSC instructor that you want to partner with, as well as an international partner, is that allowed? It's not prohibited. It's definitely something that we think is possible. The kind of sticky thing with that is the funding. The way that the funding happens this time around, at least, is that we have funding for one faculty member to receive the summer stipend, that $4,000. And then for the training, it would also be one UCSC instructor that we had the funding for. So if you have, another faculty member that you want to partner with on campus, that's okay. You just need to figure out who's getting the funding for the training, how you'll divvy up the other funding. And that's between you, but we're open to it. And then is there a particular geographic or disciplinary focus? There's not. Coil can be adapted to any discipline. There have been great humanities courses that have been adapted with Coil. There have been great STEM courses, research and lab courses as well. So any discipline is possible. And geographic, same. Really anything is possible with Coil, as long as you have that partnership. We're open to anywhere in the world.
I think we've reached the end of our formal slides, and now it's the time for any other questions that might have come to you. Perhaps we've answered all of them.
Yeah, thanks very much for the presentation. I do have a couple questions. Let me say, so I'm from linguistics, and including myself. So a few colleagues of mine are interested in not necessarily collaborating on this, but we have collaborators all across the globe. So yeah. A couple of us are interested in this. So one thing that we're not so sure about is the offering frequency, which says that the course has to be offered at least 3 times in the next 5 years, starting from the next year. So that, for example, in my case, so the course that I'll be that I would like to revise for this, it's an upper division elective, which is not actually offered that frequently. So it's offered maybe every several years, and my chair can be flexible, but it might be a little bit of a stretch to say 3 out of 5 years. So is there any way that there can be some flexibility with the offering frequency?
I think so. And I guess I would want to hear from your chair about how frequently is the course that you're considering offered? I mean, is it feasible that it might be offered 3 times in the next 6 or 7 years? I mean, that seems like a long time in the future right now.
We're just looking into some sort of flexibility. At least, I mean, we can do at least 2 that for the next 5, and then maybe one more in the
yeah. So that's exactly, I think, what we would want to see an explanation of in the endorsement form is what the plan would be to try to offer it as much as possible within this time frame.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. That's very good to know. Thank you. And is this a piece of information that I can share? I mean, I don't know if. Well, I mean, yes. This is being recorded, so okay. Being recorded. Okay.
Well, I think we're still not quite sure how much of a response that we're going to get, but I think obviously we want to see some of these launch, and we want to support those faculty who are interested in helping us to launch these. So I think we want to be, I think we want to be as flexible as we can. That was sort of a not totally arbitrary requirement, but it's, we do want to see these offered as frequently as possible.
Right,
And certainly given the amount of work that the faculty is doing to put something like this together and the work that we're doing to get these going, I think, yeah, we want them to happen as much as possible. So if all of the other aspects of the application are very strong and it just seems an obvious choice, then yeah, I think we will be flexible.
So my collaborator and I actually started talking before this call came out about, potentially working on something. So we were very excited to see this call because it's just, in time. So one thing that we want to find out is, so they, for example, my collaborator, for them, they offer a version of their course every year. Right. So, but in my case, at UCSC, we'll be offering the course, say, every 2-ish years. So there would be a gap, right? So when they're offering, but we are not offering. So, so that would be one thing, right? So then, would it be possible for them to make use of the materials? Say we make asynchronous lectures, and then they run a local version of that, making use of some of the shared material. Would that be something that's...
I would think that that's probably something between your department and the collaborator abroad, right? Whether the materials that are developed can be used, whether you give them permission or how that works.
I see. So there's no campus level policy regarding this.
I can't say that for sure, but
Okay, I'll ask.
I think
Then
they don't have any campus level prohibitive policy. Yeah, and I think if you are the primary developer of those materials, and if you give permission to use them in these off years where you're not actually teaching the course, I think that would be sufficient. But yeah, I would check with your chair. Maybe they'll have perspective on that.
Thank you. Yeah, then what if, say, we are offering, so at UCSC, we are offering the course and then they are not offering the course, then would it be possible for me to say, if we want to offer it in the summer and my partner institute doesn't really have summer courses, say, is it possible, but I really like the global classroom setup, would it be possible for me to, say, seek out another collaborator that, after, say, the first course, like I'm done with teaching it once in the fall, and then in the summer I want to do it one more time, but then there's another collaborator that whose institute actually offer summer courses.
The summer course, yeah.
That I can collaborate with. So can I then swap collaborator?
That's an interesting question. I think, there's so many variables to consider here. Yeah. I think, if you have gone through this workshop with one partner and you have developed materials in such a way that they could be utilized with another collaborator, and if that other collaborator is, the timing for a summer course works out and you all agree, yeah, I guess I don't see any issues with that. You've built the prototype, and then you can use it, I think, however you wish to implement the coil. I don't think it's beholden to one particular partner. What are your thoughts on that, Adam? Do you think that?
Yeah, I think you have it spot on. In a lot of what I have read online about Coil is that it can be faculty independent or partner independent. So once the course is created, theoretically, a different UCSC faculty could slot in and teach the course as well. Once the deliverable is put together, it can really be taught by anybody, or at least that's the hope, is that it can be moved around from partner to partner and faculty to faculty independently.
Those are really good questions, Jess. Thank you.
Thanks so much for putting together this.
It's exciting. We're on the frontier here, at least at UCSC.
And there will be more calls do you guys expect more?
That's our sincere hope, is that this is just the first of many, because as I said at the beginning, this is something that we really want to make part of our portfolio of programming at Global Engagement. And we don't see this going away after, you know, once travel returns. You know, Coil will just be something else that we can offer to students to provide a global learning experience. And so, yeah, we want this to be an annual thing.
Yeah, and this first year is a bit accelerated for the reasons that George mentioned, but for the future cohorts, we'll be able to, because time will allow us, we'll be able to provide additional partnering support. And he mentioned we're looking to kind of formalize that process and make it very simple. So the SUNY Coil Center has a membership that we're looking to become a part of, which has an online platform for partnering, for finding partners. And it's sort of their online learning community. So there are a lot of resources available there, in addition to what we're hoping to provide for future groups. So while this first one may feel a little restrictive, the next cohort even could be much more open as far as the professional development and training that we're able to provide, as well as just general support all around for every facet of the program.
If there are no more questions, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up. But you have our contact information. Happy to answer any other questions that might come up as you work through the application. Again, deadline is October 30th. Definitely looking forward to seeing your application come across.